What is up, guys? Welcome back to another UFC prediction video. This week we got UFC 320, the rematch between Big Ank, Magomed Ankalaev, and Poatan, Alex Pereira. Merab's going to defend his belt versus Cory Sandhagen, Fight of the Year contender Jiri versus Khalil Roundtree Jr. Big Meaty Hooks versus Speedy Gonzalez, Joe Pyfer, Officer Joe Sodium, he's on the card. So we got some good fights that we can look forward to. Without any further ado, we're going to go ahead and get into the full card predictions. Veronica Hardy versus Bergen Walker. I'm going to be taking Veronica Hardy to win this one via submission. I know she's been working diligently with Dan Hardy on her submission and jiu-jitsu game. I think she's going to dominate the, positions in this fight in terms of the grappling. Her striking's decent as well, puts points on the board, stays relatively safe. Bergen Walker, she ain't hurting nobody. And Hardy is the more technical and well-rounded fighter, younger, more athletic. And, she's got Dan Hardy in her corner. She's probably sound asleep in bed at night, and Dan Hardy is in the dark room. He's in the lab doing 10 hours of tape study on Bergen Walker, and he's going to put in a perfect game plan for her. So, yeah, give me Veronica Hardy to win this one via submission in the first round. All right, next fight on the card, we got Brahimaj versus Austin Vanderford. I'm going to be picking Brahimaj to knock down and sub Austin Vanderford in the first round of this fight. Look, Austin Vanderford, he has some decent wins in Bellator. Fabian Edwards, Leon Edwards' brother. But, look, Austin Vanderford's nothing to write home about. He's got some okay grappling. He's 35 years of age at this point. He beat Verentennikov in his UFC debut. Nothing to write home about. Verentennikov is a bottle-of-the-barrel UFC fighter. And look, Austin Vanderford, he's just okay. That's all he is. He's okay. And not to mention, he clearly is missing a couple brain cells. He clearly, doesn't really respect himself that much. He's dating Paige Van Zant, and I'm not picking anybody that's dating fucking Paige Van Zant. That's all that needs to be said. Brahimaj is going to choke him out cold. And because, dude, Brahimaj, he's a dog, trains out of Fortis MMA, very good grappling submission game, had a good win against Mickey Gall. He has suffered through adversity. He had a really bad back injury before the Thimba Godimbo fight, had a long time off before that fight. Yeah, Thimba was able to, out-grapple him in that fight, push a pace. But that's Thimba, who, has done that at the UFC level, who has at least proven to be somewhat decent, more athletic, than Austin Vanderford, I would say. And look, I think Brahimaj is going to be prepared for this one. I think he's going to have decent takedown defense, and other than that, I think that he's better everywhere this fight goes. Give me Brahimaj to win this one via club and sub, round one. Yeah, I just can't pick Austin Vanderford, who, he's just a joke, honestly. How are you dating Paige Van Zant? But that's just besides the point. Soriano versus Verentennikov. Literally public humiliation daily, but that's besides the point. Soriano versus Verentennikov. Verentennikov is, bottom of the barrel UFC fighter. Soriano is going to make easy work of this fight. Look, Verentennikov lost to Morales on the Contender Series. It's not a bad loss, but, got pretty much outstruck easily by Danny Barlow for 3 rounds. Danny Barlow is not even as good as we thought he was, and Danny Barlow was injured in that fight and then got absolutely dismantled and handled by, Austin Vanderford. In his last fight, look, Soriano has been looking great since going down to 170. That's where he really always should have been. I was at his first fight coming down to that weight class when he fought Miguel Beza. I picked him there as an underdog, and he absolutely schooled him there for 3 rounds. I'm going to pick Soriano to get a second round ground and pound TKO stoppage in this one. In that Miguel Beza fight, he displayed great grappling, cardio, had good takedowns, and maintained top position the entire time, landed a ton of ground and pound. And in the fight after that against Uros Medic, who is a much more talented, dynamic striker with lighter man skill compared to Verentennikov, Soriano was able to land a beautiful counter hook on him, knocked him out cold. Soriano, he's lost to Stoltzfus, Kopylov, but that's a high level of competition. Verentennikov is not on that level. And Soriano, he just simply is. And yeah, he's much better everywhere this fight goes. Power advantage, grappling advantage. He wins this one via ground and pound TKO round 2. All right, our next fight on the card, we got Patchy Mix versus Jacob Wiklacz. Look, Patchy Mix, when he made his UFC debut, I confidently picked against him, picking Mario Bautista via decision there. Even made a bet on that. And, look, Patchy Mix, he looked like he was stuck in the mud, didn't move his head any, didn't really let his hands go, didn't get the grappling off. Really just didn't do a whole lot other than, a couple of flimsy kicks at range. But at the end of the day, Mario Bautista is a quality fighter. And Jacob Wiklacz is simply not on that level. KSW champ. He has some decent, wins on his resume. He has some decent skill sets. But at the end of the day, he's predominantly a grappler. Patchy Mix, he's beaten some really good guys. Magomed, Magomedov, Rafion Stas. Those guys are probably better grapplers than Wiklacz. Patchy Mix handled that. He does have very, very good BJJ. He's a good submission artist, and I am going to pick Patchy Mix to win this one via submission. I think he'll be able to put the pressure on early, kind of get Wiklacz tired, show levels. At the end of the day, he has fought at a high level for a long time, and he took that fight on short notice against Bautista, so you got to give him a little bit of slack for that. That was one of the reasons I picked against him. He's had full preparation for this one, and I think it's a good bounce back spot for Patchy Mix. He should win this one via submission. I think he's going to kind of just march him down first 2 rounds, get him tired, and get like a Neil Magny versus Jake Matthews type of submission over Jacob Wiklacz. Don't even get me started on Jake Matthews versus Neil Magny. That's the most upset I've ever been watching a UFC fight. Macy Chasson versus Yana Santos. Look, Macy Chasson, she looks more lesbian. I'm picking her. All right. We move on. Ju Sang Yu versus Daniel Santos. Great fight here. Ju Sang Yu, second UFC fight. He got some good hype off of that first round KO that he got against Jeka Sergi. Jeka Sergi, not a high level of competition whatsoever, but he is dangerous on the feet. And you got to give Ju Sang Yu some credit just, for landing a shot in that fashion, just slumping him out cold. Daniel Santos, he has been susceptible to left side attacks previously in his career. You look at that John Castaneda fight, dropped twice with left hooks and with a left head kick. So Ju Sang Yu may be able to take advantage of that, possibly. We'll see. We haven't really seen a lot from him, on the regional scene in Asia. I've always said that I really don't look too deeply into that. The level of competition is never really all that great. And even in Brazil, I don't really think the regional competition is all that great down there either. But Daniel Santos, he has been in the UFC for a while, coming off of a good win against Lee where he did get, I believe, 5 or 6 takedowns and did have some success with the grappling in that fight. Shoot to box fighter, good leg kicks, good grappling, good BJJ. I think that is definitely somewhere where he could hold an advantage in this fight. Ju Sang Yu really is predominantly a boxer, looks for counter strikes, looks for, slick hooks and stuff like that. Daniel Santos, he could definitely have major success in this fight, chewing up the calves, changing levels, getting to the back, and just using his grappling to win this fight. But I am kind of believing in the hype of Ju Sang Yu. He's undefeated for a reason. He has good coaching behind him. And, just from what I've seen, he's decently well-rounded. And if this fight does stay on the feet, I 100% favor him to win. I think he is the better striker overall. It just comes down to the fact, is Daniel Santos going to take him down, hold him down? He could, like I said, he landed like 6 takedowns in his last fight. But, my gut feeling is just telling me that Ju Sang Yu is going to be able to find a KO in this fight. The durability of these shoot-to-box guys, it always is questionable. Daniel Santos has shown that in the past as well. And you don't really have a reason to pick against Ju Sang Yu other than the fact that he just hasn't proven it. His grappling, that is, at the UFC level. Is Daniel Santos really going to have that much success with it? Give me Ju Sang Yu to win this fight by knockout. I'll take him to win by first round TKO. I'm going to jump on the hype train. Maybe it's a little bit early. Maybe after this fight we'll be saying, pump the brakes. Am I saying that he's going to be, a ranked level guy, a top 10 level guy? Probably not, but I think he's good enough to beat Daniel Santos here. I like the boxing advantage, and I just have a feeling that the durability is going to fail Daniel Santos at some point. So yeah, give me Juicing you to win this one by a second round TKO. I think he'll land like a nice, uppercut hook combination after like slipping a jab or something like that. So yeah, give me Juicing you by TKO. Next fight on the card, Chris Gutierrez versus Farid Basharat. This is probably going to be quite a boring fight. You'll want to play the over in this fight, over 2.5 rounds, fight to go the distance for sure. But, I'll take Farid Basharat to win a decision here, split decision. Chris Gutierrez, had a decent win against John Castaneda last time out. I don't really rate that. He was able to beat Quang Lee. That's a decent win. Definitely a decent win in hindsight. But he's a guy that always goes to decision, spams leg kicks, isn't really finishing guys unless you're an old Frankie Edgar. And Farid Basharat, even though he's nowhere near as good as his record indicates, beating guys like Victor Hugo last time out, he's decent. He does what he's supposed to in terms of getting his hand raised consistently, but the performances are never really that good. Doesn't really have a dangerous skill set whatsoever. He has a good fadeaway counter right hand for sure. And, some decent little string bean kicks and solid takedowns, grappling. The control is solid as well. But he just is a guy that is decent at winning minutes, doesn't really take too many risks. And as soon as the fight gets a little bit iffy, he just, gets some clutch takedowns. I think it's going to be pretty much more of the same here against Chris Gutierrez. Is Chris Gutierrez going to be able to march him down, hurt him? No. Chris Gutierrez literally doesn't throw hands, only kicks, the occasional knee, about 70,000 feints, even though he hasn't threatened anything. Look, Farid Basharat, I like the counter rights. I like the wrestling advantage. We've seen Chris Gutierrez get controlled by guys like Song Yadong. I know Song Yadong's way stronger and, more physically imposing than a Farid Basharat, but I think Basharat wins a decision here. I do. Chris Gutierrez just doesn't do enough damage. No hands. Just leg kicks at range. I think Farid can deal with that realistically. They're going to fight at each other's pace. The grappling is going to give Farid the advantage in this one. Chris Gutierrez, his takedown defense isn't that good. Quang Lee did take him down. He survives when he's on the ground, but, the takedown defense just isn't there. He's always kind of square, throwing calf kicks. Very easy to take down, very easy to land boxing on. Farid Basharat wins this fight by decision. All right, next fight on the card, we have Edmen Shahbazyan versus Andre Muniz. I'm going to pick Edmen Shahbazyan to win by first round TKO, but I'm worried because Andre Muniz, look, he got absolutely handled in his last fight versus Ikram Aliskerov, but, you look in this fight before that versus the Iron Turtle, a lot of people have the Iron Turtle winning that fight. I think Andre Muniz did enough. Look, Edmen Shahbazyan lost to Gerald Meerschaert a year ago. And that's a concerning look because GM3, even though he's one of the best of all time, he's nowhere near, he's nowhere near in his prime. He's absolutely washed. I mean, we've seen that in his last couple of fights. He's done. And Edmen was GM3's last win. And GM3, he was able to weather the early storm, and then eventually he was able to wrap up that submission. That's concerning when you're fighting an Andre Muniz who has, a freakish reach, 78-inch reach. Edmen Shahbazyan, he's a guy that does do good work at range, but he gasses out. He gasses out in every fight, even when he goes the distance against a Petrosky, who, isn't really a quality fighter. Edmen Shahbazyan really should be finishing that. He's going to the cards with them. Does tend to, really fall off a cliff after round one. We've seen that in basically all of his losses. Amavov, Fluffy, those are top 5 level guys for sure. But, just like the GM3 fight, if he gets tired, it could be an issue because Andre Muniz, he's very good at pressuring. He's got a good clinch. He's able to get you down to the mat. He's got good BJJ. If Edmen does struggle, if he's not able to get the round 1 KO, Andre Muniz may be able to kind of just, use that really slow, methodical BJJ, kind of hang on you, get you to the ground, take your back. He might be able to have some success with that late, but I think that Edmen, he should be able to do what he did to Dylan Budka and what Ikram did to Andre Muniz. He should be able to just catch him with a clean counter very early in this fight. He has great stand-up, really good counter shots. You know, the AJ Dobson counter a while back that he had was very, very good. Clean left hook, I believe that was. And he's the more naturally talented fighter, much quicker, fast twitch, much better striker. And he's been improving on a fight-to-fight basis, let's be real. You know, he's fought 2 grapplers in his last 2. Were they decent levels of competition? Barely, with Budka and Andre Petrosky. But Andre Muniz, he's older. You know, his claim to fame is just kind of that sub against the older Jacare Souza anyway. Edmond should be able to just keep his space here. Andre Muniz isn't shooting explosive takedowns regardless. And he's not even as crafty as GM3, to be real. Give me Edmond Shahbazyan to win this one by a first-round TKO. The striking speed advantage, footwork advantage, it's going to be too much. He'll get the job done in this one. Ateba Gautier did get a replacement, Treston Vines. Look, unless Treston Vines is like some absolute killer All-American wrestler that I don't know about, who's going to be able to test Ateba Gautier and get him to the mat, you know, drag him into deep waters, Ateba Gautier is going to catch another body in this one. Look, Ateba, basically mini Ngannou, patient Ngannou, trains at a Manchester top team. You got to expect he's going to improve rapidly on a fight-to-fight basis. He's probably going to get a round 1 TKO here. No need to look too deep into the weeds. All right, we move on to the main card. Abu Magomedov versus Joe Sodium Pyfer. Officer Pyfer, straight out of Kensington, Pennsylvania. Look. Man. Ateba Gautier. That dude's a machine. Abus Magomedov, you know, in his last win against Michel Pereira, it wasn't really that impressive, let's be real. Michel Pereira has looked absolutely washed as fuck recently. And I'm glad he got KO'd because, you know, remember that flag he was walking out of the cage with? But that's besides the point. I don't want to get fucking canceled. Look, Abus Magomedov, he beat a washed up Michel Pereira, who's like completely checked out of the fight game at this point. I don't know what's wrong with that dude. You know, he was able to beat Bruno Ferreira, which is, you know, a solid win, round 3 submission. But, you know, I can't ever get over the loss to Sean Strickland, and the loss to Caio Baralho really isn't aging that great. I know it's one loss to Imavov, and Imavov's world class, but, you know, Caio kind of schooled Abu. And Abu, you know, he's looked decent against other guys, you know, the good stoppage victory over Stoltzfus in his debut. But him folding against the cage like he was about to puke against Strickland and getting pretty much handled easily by Caio, Joe Pyfer's going to win this fight. Look, Joe Pyfer, I kind of shat on his performance against KG a little bit too much because Kelvin Gastelum's been looking great recently, to be honest. You know, the win against Dustin, the win against D-Rod, those are 2 solid wins for KG. And his hand speed's been looking good. His defense has been looking good. Even his wrestling has been all right. And Joe Pyfer pretty much 30-27'd him. You know, dropped him bad with the right hand. Kelvin has always had crazy, crazy durability and good head movement and defense with the boxing especially. And Joe Pyfer, you know, he was tagging him with clean shots. Head kicks were on display. He's been improving on a fight-to-fight basis. We know he trains, you know, day in, day out with Sean Brady, with these guys up in Philly. You know, Paul Felder has been down there getting in work with these guys. Dean Thomas as well, a good jiu-jitsu coach. I'm confident that Joe Pyfer is going to have a grappling advantage in this fight. We've seen Abu out-grappled by Caio. You know, even though he was able to get the submission win over Bruno Ferreira, I don't think that Bruno Ferreira is really on the level of a Joe Pyfer whatsoever. I think Joe Pyfer is a future top 10, possibly top 7-ish ranked fighter in this division. And Abu Magomedov is simply not that. This is a projection pick. And Joe Pyfer is the guy that's going to have the future, you know, in this division. Abu Magomedov is not. And Joe Pyfer, I think, wins this fight by knockout. I'll take him to win by second round TKO. You know, look, I think Abu eventually, at the end of that first round, all the front kicks, the leg kicks, all the straight shots, very, you know, explosive attacks that he uses early, I think he'll even try to go for some takedowns late because I think he's going to get hurt on the feet. I think he's going to start panicking. I think he's going to get exhausted. I think it'll look very similar to the Sean Strickland fight. I think Joe Pyfer finishes him up easily with body shots, followed up by maybe a mean uppercut, kind of like how Pereira did Khalil, 2 body shots and an uppercut. I could see something like that from Joe Sodium against Abu Magomedov. Yeah, I think Joe Pyfer, he's going to handle this fight. I think his volume will be a little bit more than it was in the KG fight. I think he realized that the hand speed and the countering ability of KG was a little bit of an issue, and also southpaw stance, a little bit of an issue. But I think Abu's actually going to be a much easier fight for Joe Pyfer than a KG. And I think Kelvin Gastelum, honestly, would probably beat Abu Magomedov. So, yeah, give me Joe Pyfer. I think he'll land heavy leg kicks, land good body shots, good left hooks to the liver, pressure him, get him tired. He'll have the grappling advantage. Abu, he's going to be reactive. He's going to be expending hella energy. He's not going to be staying calm. His boxing's nowhere near as good in the pocket. Michel Pereira, I think he's honestly kind of getting that win overvalued for sure. Yeah. Look, Joe Pyfer's going to fucking knock him the hell out. He's going to knock him the hell out, mate. Got to get back here. All right. Look. Next fight on the card, Josh Emmett versus Youssef Zalal. I'm going to take Youssef Zalal to win a decision here. Look, Josh Emmett, he's a good fighter, and I kind of feel for him because he always gets a hard matchup, He was able to beat Bryce Mitchell, had a viral, insane KO. But, schooled, beyond schooled. I mean, just absolutely handled by Ilia Topuria, handled by, Yair Rodriguez, subbed by Yair Rodriguez, which really isn't a good look. And in that Yair Rodriguez fight, that was for the interim belt. That's the closest Josh Emmett has ever been to getting a title, and he quit in that fight, realistically. And I think after that, he realized that he's never going to get that belt. Josh Emmett, he can land a big blast double leg takedown. He can land a calf kick 2 around. Other than that, it's big meaty hooks. Let's be real. We know the deal with Josh Emmett. He hits like a truck. If you get caught with the big overhand right, you're probably going out. But when that's all you have to worry about, you can manage an effective game plan. We saw Topuria do that. We saw Yair handle him. He was a little spazzy in that fight, but he ended up finishing him up pretty easy. Josh Emmett quit just due to the, skill and striking disadvantage that he had. And Lerone Murphy basically handled him for 5 rounds. Just used more tools, elbows, kicks, lateral movement, good jabs. Just put points on the board. And look, Josh Emmett, when he fights against guys that are good at putting points on the board and just being faster, elusive, against him, he struggles. And Youssef Zalal is going to be able to do that. Youssef Zalal is very good at sticking and moving, putting points on the board, in and out of range. And even in some of his recent victories, against Billy Q, Jack Shore, he has been getting very, very good submissions. I wouldn't be surprised if he's able to utilize, some grappling against Josh Emmett here in this one. Josh Emmett, he's probably going to be getting, well, it's not probably, he's going to be getting touched up at range. Zalal's going to be switching stances, tagging him with the jab, switching stances, kneeing him upstairs, body kicks, teeps, lots of angles. Zalal's a very good striker, classic Factory X Muay Thai striker, but he actually does have solid hands as well. And, I picked him to beat Calvin Kattar, was very confident that he would beat Calvin Kattar in that fight. And it's going to look very similar here against Josh Emmett, where, Josh Emmett's just not going to be able to land that shot. Zalal's going to speed mog him. Speed kills in this sport. Zalal's going to be the much faster fighter. And I think that Josh Emmett, when he gets desperate, he's going to end up running into counter knees. He might even run into, Zalal just being able to hit a little duck under, take the back, get the body triangle locked in on him, secure the 3rd round that way. Zalal's going to have a technical masterclass in this one. Josh Emmett, he's been slowing down. He's 40 years of age. I mean, how long are we going to be able to rely on a big meaty hook to win fights in the top 10 of the UFC featherweight division. Not long. Yusuf Zalal wins this fight. Projection pick at the end of the day. Taller. He's going to have the reach advantage, I believe, as well. Zalal's going to win this fight via decision. Very, very confident pick there. All right. Man, we move on to the feature fight of the evening. Jiri Prochazka versus Khalil Roundtree Jr. This has fight of the year written all over it. I'm very, very excited for this fight. And I hate to have to pick a winner in this one because I just adore these two fighters. I love both of these guys. These two guys, Ankalaev, I mean, those are three fighters that I just really, really enjoy watching in the light heavyweight division. Really, really enjoy watching these guys. Jiri Prochazka, without a doubt, my second favorite fighter in the game right now. I mean, every single time he fights, it's absolutely electric. Literal cinema. It's like storm clouds and lightning strike around the arena. Music starts playing. It's absolutely incredible. I mean, the wars that he's had, and insane, like leaping right hand against Ozdemir, stains him out cold. Spinning elbow knockout of the year against Reyes. Fight of the year against Teixeira. Two classics against Alex Pereira. Crazy comeback victory on UFC 300 versus Alexander Rakic. Insane war against Jamal Hill. I mean, every single time this dude steps in the cage, it's, a fight of the year, a fight of the night, knockout of the year. It's insane. He's the most entertaining fighter in the sport right now, without a doubt. Without a doubt. But he did get knocked out twice by Alex Pereira. And he has his flaws. Both of these guys, I've honestly bet in their last couple of fights. I bet Jiri in the Jamal fight, bet him both times against Alex, bet him against Rakic. And Khalil Roundtree, same thing, bet him against Pereira. Love fading Pereira. Love fading Alex Pereira. Get out of here, bro. Even though I lost this, look, we'll talk about the Ankalaev fight. Khalil Roundtree, bet him against Hill, bet him against Alex, bet him against Smith, bet him against Dawkins. Both of these guys have came through for me and both lost against Alex, where, they both had very, very different performances against Alex Pereira, where Jiri in the first fight, he did all right in that first round. You can really say he won that first round, especially with the takedown on the ground and pound. But, he got handled in the striking in the second. Early stoppage for sure in that first fight, but in that second fight that Jiri had with Alex, I mean, he got fucked up pillar to post, body kicked to shit, leg kicked to shit, and then head kicked out cold. Khalil Roundtree Jr., however, when he fought Alex Pereira, he was arguably 3 rounds up in that fight against Alex before the stoppage, and, he gassed out. Definitely due to the jab, got his nose broken, body shots for sure, but don't forget that fight was at elevation. Look at this. Let me tell you this. If that fight against Alex Pereira was not at elevation and was a 3-round fight, Khalil Roundtree wins against Alex Pereira. Am I wrong? I don't think so. If this was a 5-round fight, I would pick Jiri Prochazka without a second of doubt. But when you're only needing 3 rounds to work, when you only have 3 rounds to work, Jiri does rely on breaking guys late. Round 3 TKO versus Rakic. Round 3 TKO versus Jamal Hill. I think it was a round 2 TKO versus Rakic, but it took him getting him tired. It took him wearing him down. It took him taking the initial onslaught. And also, both of these guys are, in a way, each other's kryptonite. Jiri Prochazka, what are his weaknesses? Leg kicks, counter hooks. Khalil Roundtree, what are his weaknesses? Pressure, straight shots with head movement. You think about Alex Pereira and Dustin Jacoby, both had a lot of success. 1-2, pull 2, combinations like that. Yuri's very good. 1-2, he'll switch stances, get off center line like he did against Jamal Hill, come back with the left hand, the left straight. And also pressure. Khalil Roundtree has no footwork and no head movement or defense off of the back foot. Khalil Roundtree might get backed up and just absolutely mopped up against Jiri. There's a big possibility of that happening. But like I said, Jiri, his main issues, his main weaknesses in his fight game are leg kicks and counter hooks, and those are literally Khalil Rountree's strengths. His two best attributes are his leg kicks and his counter hooks. And Jiri Prochazka, like I said, he's got the really good straight shots. His pressure is just incredible, always gets you tired. But when Jiri Prochazka fights somebody that, in his own mind, is a dangerous technical striker, like an Alex Pereira, he tends to hesitate a little more than he does against a guy like Rakic, against a guy like Jamal Hill, who, they're just a regular MMA fighter in Yuri's mind. Jiri, I think, going into this one, is going to be a little bit patient compared to his other fights, kind of like he was against Pereira, because I think he views Khalil Rountree as like this dangerous Muay Thai fighter, which he is. If Jiri goes in here, 100% with like that heavy pressure that he normally has, he wins this fight. But if he has any type of patience whatsoever and lets Khalil build, he will lose. Because, like I said, I think the leg kicks are going to be a serious issue for Jiri Prochazka. That's how Khalil won his last fight. It wasn't a leg kick TKO, but the leg kick accumulation of damage against Jamal Hill completely stifled everything that Jamal Hill was trying to do in that fight. And, man, I can also just see Khalil, shelling up. He has a good high guard and just leaping into a right hook, nailing Jiri as he comes in with his hands down. I have these visions. I also can see, Khalil, as he's backing up, Jiri just kind of grabs the arm, boom, comes in with that mean overhand right and just lays him out after, surviving the initial onslaught. Maybe Khalil Rountree, he's trying to time leg kicks off of the punches of Jiri, and Jiri with his, big reach advantage just kind of gets to the punch first, knocks out Khalil while he's standing on one leg. This is a very hard fight to call. The odds opened -110 both sides. That's really where I would line this fight. I think it's a complete pick 'em. Toss a coin up in the air and decide. But, we got Khalil Rountree coming in as, he's right around a plus 150 right now. Jiri, right around -175. I have to pick Khalil Rountree to win this fight. Jiri Prochazka is one of my favorite fighters of all time, one of my favorite fighters to ever throw a punch. But I have to bank on who is improving more on a fight-to-fight basis at this point in their career. Khalil Rountree is. Jiri Prochazka is not improving on a fight-to-fight basis. When you look at that Jamal Hill fight, you may say, yeah, the head movement's improved. I was talking about, before that fight, about how Jiri's head movement was underrated. Pereira was just the type of guy to be able to take advantage of it. You look back at that Dominic Reyes fight, Jiri Prochazka had very similar head movement. Even Dominic Reyes, a hard-hitting southpaw with good counters, he was hurting Jiri Prochazka on multiple occasions, eventually succeeded to the pressure, but Khalil Rountree, he's been improving on a fight-to-fight basis. I think the leg kicks are going to be a serious issue for Jiri Prochazka. Jiri's going to have the pressure, but Khalil does have decent defense. He's got good counter hooks with a high guard, catch and throw. I think that's going to give Jiri issues. He's been bringing in, Christian Knowles, Jonathan Haggerty's Muay Thai coach. I think the kicking game is definitely going to give Jiri issues. Do I think that Christian Knowles is going to make him an absolute world beater capable of beating Ankalaev? No. But if his leg kicks improve by 15%, that's enough to probably get a leg kick TKO stoppage over Jiri. We know Jiri has issues with that because of his stance. And if he sharpens up just a little bit, it's going to give him an edge here against Jiri. Trains out of Syndicate MMA. I like John Wood as a head coach as well. I think he's going to go in there with a good game plan. And if Jiri gets tagged early, if he gets dropped early, I can see him being more tentative, He didn't get dropped versus Hill. He didn't get dropped versus Rakic. You're lying to yourself if you don't think that Khalil Rountree doesn't have the power to drop Jiri Prochazka. He does. I hate to do it, and I've never done it on this channel. I'm picking Khalil Rountree to beat Jiri Prochazka. I've never picked against Jiri Prochazka. The only fighters I would pick against Jiri would be Khalil and Ank. I got to go Khalil here. I like the leg kicks. I think he can attack the body in an open stance matchup with kicks. I think he can dig the left hand into the body. I like the catch and counter hooks upstairs. Jiri's going to have to go through hell in the first round to be able to get a stoppage. He's going to have to eat hooks. He's going to have to eat leg kicks. He's going to get into elbow range with Khalil. Khalil doesn't really throw a ton of elbows, but he could run into a counter. And if he gets dropped, we've seen Jiri get dropped. We've seen him get hurt. He's even been hurt to the body against Jamal Hill. How long is he going to be able to maraud? How long before he starts getting hurt? This is light heavyweight. It's 205. Rakic and Jamal Hill don't hit that hard. Neither does Oezdemir or Reyes compared to Khalil. Reyes has a good sniper left hand on the back foot. It's not the raw power that Khalil has, the fast twitch. Khalil's faster, way faster. So much faster with the kicks. So much faster with his counters. Jiri is a marauder, and he has the ability to apply that pressure. And he's creative, and the shots come from weird angles. And Khalil doesn't do good on the back foot whatsoever. But is he going to get backed up that early? Because I think Jiri is going to try and feel his way into this fight like he did against Pereira. And Khalil's going to be using decent technique to be able to outpoint him. I'm taking Khalil Roundtree to win a decision. I know that's an out there pick for this fight. Everyone's taking, one of these guys to win by KO. Most people are taking Jiri to win by knockout. Give me Khalil on points in this one. 3-round fight. I like Khalil. Man, I hate picking against Jiri. He'll probably win, but I'm taking Khalil via decision. All right. We have Merab Dvalishvili versus Cory Sandhagen in the co-main event of the evening. Look, Merab Dvalishvili should win this fight. He's the GOAT bantamweight, without a doubt. But all I'm going to say is rewatch round 2 versus O'Malley in the rematch. O'Malley won that round against Merab in the rematch. People are saying that Merab's getting better and better on a fight-to-fight basis. I don't think so. I like Merab as a fighter, and I've picked against him in his last 3 matchups. Lost a lot of money betting against him in his last 3 matchups. The dude's not unbeatable. He's not unbeatable. In fact, he's very beatable. Umar Magomedov won that fight. Umar won the fight that he had against Merab. I'm sorry, I've rewatched it like 5 times. I cannot unsee it. If Merab doesn't stop the takedown by standing up and putting his hands in the air and laughing, he does not win that round. And Umar wins on the cards. I had Umar winning the first 3 rounds of that fight. I believe that was the 3rd round. I might be mistaken. I've rewatched the fight a ton of times. I rewatched it literally 2 days ago before I made this video. Look, Merab's so beatable, man. He's so beatable, but he gets the job done because, look, at the end of the day, even though he's beatable, he'll never fucking lose because he's built different. At the end of the day, it just comes down to go Merab. Like Lucas Tracy said, it doesn't fucking matter about what's on paper. Cory Sandhagen has excellent grappling. He's very good from the 50-50 position. He's very good at putting points on the board with his long-rangey strikes. Change the elevation. You got to imagine he's going to have very good cardio. Even in the Umar Magomedov fight, he was doing very good at scrambling out of these positions. And, with a guy like Cory Sandhagen, you have to think that, controlling him and holding him down is probably more effective than, spamming the takedowns like Merab tends to do. It doesn't matter. Merab's winning this fight via decision, 49-46. Cory will win the first round. Merab will dog walk him from there on out. Because it's so easy on paper to pick against Merab. But at the end of the day, when you're breaking the UFC takedown record of all time against Umar Magomedov, you're built fucking different. He has ungodly cardio. He has ungodly toughness. Sean O'Malley literally put his entire left hand through Merab's head in the rematch. like as he was fading away against the fence, caught him with a counter. It was hard to see because Merab literally ate that shit like a fucking Dorito. He's fucking built different. He's an alien from Mars. I don't know where they found this guy, but he's built different. At the end of the day, he's built different, and I'll never pick against him, except for against Umar when they fight again. But look, he was able to completely, turn Jose Aldo into a fucking bug that got splattered against the wall by a fly swatter. Completely dominated Jose Aldo, completely dominated Peter Yan 50-45 in one of the most scary, ungodly performances of all time in UFC history. Who 50-45 is Peter Yan? No one's even beat Peter Yan other than Merab. Demolished Henry Cejudo, embarrassed him, Olympic gold wrestler, picked him up like a sack of potatoes, and then, was able to defeat Sean O'Malley twice. Very, very, very close fight with Umar Magomedov. Got it done by the skin of his teeth, but that just shows how good he is. Umar Magomedov is, going to be the next champ, and he will not lose that belt. But we're talking about Merab right now, and he's the greatest bantamweight of all time. Nobody has a resume that good. Aldo, Yan, Cejudo, Sean twice, Umar. He's too fucking good. He's got fucking the best sambo ever, insane wrestling, insane jiu-jitsu, insane judo. His grappling is on another level. He never gets tired. And at the end of the day, he's just going to be able to spam. He can spam, whatever he has to. 10-piece combinations on the feet, just running at you. It's round 5 versus Umar and Magomedov. He's eaten 20 head kicks in that fight, and he's literally shooting takedown. 15 seconds doesn't even go by. Another takedown against Umar and Magomedov. Khabib's losing his fucking mind in the corner. Merab's just going crazy, laughing it off. Merab will literally have like a hole in his shin and a staph on his forehead, broken arm, and he's still going out there. It doesn't matter if he gets kneed in the fucking skull and his eyeball pops out of his socket. You're gonna hear fucking Ray Longo in the corner. Go, Merab! And he's just gonna get him, man. Merab's gonna get him. And I got Merab 50-45 on one card, 49-46 on the other two. I think Merab's gonna handle Cory Sandhagen in this fight. When you look at it on paper, Cory may have a chance, but Merab's going to end up just picking him up across his shoulder, slamming him about 40 times. I think Merab Dvalishvili is going to be able to pick up Cory Sandhagen, throw him out of the octagon, absolutely embarrass him. Yeah, Merab's career best performance is probably going to happen in this fight. Like I said, he has his flaws, and I picked against him in his last 3, but this is like a tailor-made matchup for him to have an absolute masterclass. So give me Merab by decision. All right, we move on to the main events of the evening. Magomed Ankalaev, the light heavyweight champion of the world, like I predicted last time, taking on Alex Pereira. Look, Alex Pereira, we know the deal with him. Look, I went on a tirade when they first fought about how Magomed was going to handle this fight. And he won, convincingly, dominantly. But one thing that was highly concerning was the lack of takedowns. I think he'll get takedowns in this fight. And at the end of the day, this is the exact same matchup. Magomed Ankalaev versus Alex Pereira plus 100 and minus 110 was my biggest MMA bet of all time when he fought Magomed, when Alex and Magomed fought the first time. Ank was, my biggest MMA bet ever, got the job done. And I'm going to be biased towards him in this matchup. It's going to be the same thing, but I think Magomed's going to get a round 3 ground and pound finish. It's what I picked in the first fight, and it's what I see happening again. Alex Pereira was never that great. He never really was. I'm sorry, but it's just a fact. His UFC career, war with Bruno Silva, got taken down by Michailidis in his debut. That's neither of those are good looks. Was able to chin Sean Strickland. Sean Strickland's not a good MMA fighter. He's trash. He's not a championship level MMA fighter. Sean Strickland, that is. So I don't really care about that win from LX. Lucky finish against Izzy, where Izzy thought he had it in the bag. Got, his bell rung and out-grappled by Izzy in that fight. Almost lost, got the clutch win, went Gehetto mode. He went Gehetto mode, he got the job done. That was his best MMA win, was that win against Izzy. Izzy absolutely folded him and turned him into a corpse in the rematch. That's what I think Ank's going to do this time. Let's not act like Pereira literally hasn't seen God before. People used to act like he was invincible. Boy, how times change, how the narrative has shifted. But look, Poetard then moves up to 205, arguably loses to Jan Blachowicz, got out-grappled in that fight. The judges give him the nod. He gets it done, split decision against an old Jan Blachowicz at altitude. It wasn't really that impressive of a fight. Beats Jiri coming in off of a shoulder surgery, huge layoff, gets an early stoppage there. Fights Jamal Hill coming in off of a huge layoff, a surgery, gets a stoppage there. First round hook, doesn't really display anything. Fights Jiri on short notice. It's short notice. Jiri didn't have time to prepare for that fight. And, fights Khalil Roundtree at altitude, was down 3-0, and then, Khalil gasses out. He's able to get the stoppage there. That's my honest opinion on Alex Pereira's UFC career. And you were taking that over the best light heavyweight of all time, comparable to John Jones in terms of his skill set, in terms of his resume at this point. Magomed Ankalaev, the guy who's literally, if you want to be mature about it, he's never lost. I spoke on this last time. The Paul Craig triangle, I honestly thought Magomed thought that the clapper was the bell. That's just my, conspiracy theory. So I look past that. That was a complete fluke. And then the no contest versus Johnny Walker, we know that Magomed was going to handle that fight. He was on his way to winning that fight. The Jan Blachowicz draw, I don't think that was a draw. I think that Magomed Ankalaev won that fight, and he should have been the defending light heavyweight champion a while back, to be real. Magomed Ankalaev should be literally 24-0. Magomed Ankalaev should be 24-0. He's going to win this fight against Alex Pereira. I'll put this clip on screen.
Ankalaev trying to get on the pressure a little bit here. The pressure's going to be very...
While I was rewatching their first fight, this is literally all you need to see. Alex Pereira tries to land a 1-2. Slow, unmotivated, inaccurate. Just a cumbersome 1-2. It's like he's hitting pads with Polino Cruz, in a hotel lobby. That's what you get when you're he was fucking around before their last fight, traveling the world. He thought his shit didn't stink. He was getting too big for his boots. Magomed was in the mountains training, getting ready for this shit, shooting double legs. Look. Shit, what was I even talking about? The clip. Alex Pereira goes with this, super fucking lazy-ass 1-2. Misses, and then Magomed goes in with the quickest fucking jab to the body, head off center line, perfect defense that you've ever seen in your life, out of range, right back to it. That's the only exchange you even need to see to make a prediction for this fight. Alex Pereira is quite literally at a 75% speed disadvantage in terms of the boxing in this fight. Magomed Ankalaev, his hand speed is twice as fast than Alex. Alex has always struggled against southpaws. You saw that in the Khalil fight. His jab to the body and his calf kick are completely gone against a southpaw. So you're taking away his two best weapons. He's not going to win this fight. He doesn't have his two best weapons, jab to the body, leg kick. And Magomed Ankalaev, literally every single time Alex threw the left hook, Magomed either blocked it, rolled, got out of the way. He was completely prepared. And he showed literally no adversity in that Alex Pereira fight the first time. Schooled him with the boxing in the second. beat him tit for tat in the third, and then completely out-grappled him and held him against the fence in the fourth and the fifth. Boring fight, okay, but Magomed dominated, and he's going to do the same thing again. I think that in this fight, in fact, I actually know exactly how this fight's going to go. It's quite obvious, realistically. Alex Pereira, he's going to think he needs to be more aggressive because he's not going to be able to play his tit-for-tat game as effectively. Like I said, he doesn't have his two best weapons. He can't win tit-for-tat. He has to go for the knockout with his hands. He's going to have to be very aggressive to do so. He can't fight moving well off of the back foot. Magomed Ankalaev, very, very smart with his pressure. Slower pressure than Pereira when Pereira is going, forward on the front foot like he did round 4 versus Khalil. He's going to try to go round 4 versus Khalil from the very get-go against Ankalaev. So he's going to be on the front foot. He's going to be trying to slip and rip. He's going to be trying to use that pressure against Ankalaev. And guess what? It's literally going to be suicide. He has a better chance trying to be defensive and just stuffing takedowns and chopping the legs than trying to be offensive, overly aggressive in this fight, because Magomed Ankalaev, his entire game is countering. He has insane countering ability with his hands. The left straight counter is going to be landing all day. I think he's going to drop. Alex Pereira hurt him really badly with that counter left, just like I said he would in the first fight. He's going to do the same in this one. He's going to hurt him with that straight left. And Alex Pereira, he's going to make it even easier if he's just bum rushing Ankalaev. Ankalaev had to pick his shots last time because Alex was being very technical on the back foot, going tit for tat, also trying to avoid the takedown. When Pereira goes overly aggressive, when he tries to, just bum rush, he's going to get lit up. Think back to how Ion Cutelaba ran into that nasty 3-6 combination that Ankalaev knocked him out with. It's going to be something similar to that. Check hook, uppercut, check hook, left hand from Magomed. And Alex is going to get hurt badly from that in the first round. And then the entire tune of the fight's going to change. It's going to look like the first one for a little bit during the second round. So yeah, I think first round, Alex is going to try to go round 4 versus Khalil mode. He's going to get badly countered with the boxing. Round 2 is going to look very, very similar to round 2 in the first fight. And then round 3, I think that Plinio, Teixeira, they're going to say, hey, look, we're 2-0 down. We got to go for the knockout now. Alex, he's going to go, he's going to try to go round 5 versus Izzy mode. He's going to run into a double leg takedown. And then Magomed is going to finish the fight with ground and pound via TKO round 3. That's how the fight's going to end. So, yeah, looking forward to this fight. Absolutely love this card. But, yeah, I'll try to review my picks real quick. I got Hardy, Ramiz Brahimaj, Punelli Soriano, Patchy Mix, Macy Chasson, Ju Sang Yu, Farid Basharat, Edmund, Ateba, Joe Sodium, Yusuf, Khalil, Merab, and big motherfucking Ank. So, yeah, those are my picks. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Like and subscribe. Leave a comment if you agree or disagree with any of my takes. And enjoy the card this weekend.